We have a 44-year-old quarterback returning to the NFL. My favorite quarterback may be retiring early, but I don't think so. We'll talk about that more here on No Buts About It. What's up, everyone? Welcome to No Buts About It. We have Stan, the Jet fan, joining us today. I am Josh Butts, and Stan, we've got a lot to talk about today. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, we are going to talk about Phillip Rivers returning to the Indianapolis Colts and that crazy story. We are also going to talk about Joe Burrow's little bit concerning press conference that he gave on his birthday. Kind of a sad birthday. But we've got a few things to talk about before we get to that. So make sure you subscribe and like this video, comment, let us know what you think, so you don't miss anything. Helps us out, helps you out. And Stan, I think first thing we had to discuss, you and me, we went over what we wanted to talk about today, and you wanted to talk about tonight, Thursday Night Football, Atlanta Falcons, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, NFC South matchup. What stands out to you about tonight's game?
I mean, the first thing is the Bucs. We haven't really seen a healthy offense from them in so long, and it's looking very likely that we will see that tonight. Now, there's still some, guys out. You still don't have a fully healthy O-line, and that's going to impact a lot of what you can do. But having all of the weapons there for Baker to get the ball to, which it is looking like he will have tonight, that to me is probably the biggest game changer this team can have moving forward. I mean, their defense has been up and down. They still have a defensive head coach who hasn't really been looking like a defensive head coach this year. But that offense, having Mike Evans specifically back, that opens up so much for you, especially with the other wide receivers in that room who've been expanding on their roles throughout this season. And now those younger receivers, like Egbuka, for example, he doesn't have to be the guy as he's been for what feels like most of the season now. He has Godwin there to kind of share that role as a second option with him. And Mike Evans coming back to be that number one for this team, that's a big difference maker right there. And that's not even talking about Sterling Shepard, who's taken a couple of steps up this season, talking about McMillan, who's coming back. Bucky Irving, who came back recently, is healthy now and looking great. Ted Johnson, who had to step up from being a guy who wasn't really supposed to see more than maybe 5 or 10 receptions on the year, stepping up and having a big role in this offense. The Bucs, it's do or die time for them. The Panthers are looking good. The Bucs are facing them twice in the upcoming weeks. They just now lost to the Saints, which should have been an easy win for that team. Now, tonight, Thursday Night Football, division rival against the Falcons. Big game, big moment. You have your guys on offense back. It's very much the last stand, in my opinion, for the Bucs.
Yeah, I think, first of all, for the Buccaneers, yes, it's a last stand division matchup, but I think what you touched on early is kind of something we talked about last week, is who is getting healthy in December. Who can make that playoff push in December? And getting Mike Evans back. You didn't say his name, at least that I heard, but Jalen McMillan is expected to come back as well. That's another big add. Maybe not a starter. We'll see kind of how everything shakes out, but a good depth piece and takes some of that pressure off of Egbuka, like you mentioned. And Egbuka's been kind of struggling lately. And is that because he's a bad receiver? No. But, he's a rookie, and he was, kind of probably wide receiver 3 coming into the season. Injuries happen. He's wide receiver 1 with Bucky, and then all of a sudden he's wide receiver 1 without Bucky, and Baker's kind of beat up. So that's a lot of pressure to do in your rookie season to try and carry this team that was kind of seen as an early powerhouse. Remember, we were talking about Baker Mayfield and MVP conversations. We were talking about, the Buccaneers looked really good early on, and then they just kind of, due to injury, just kind of fell flat. And now they don't look as good, but they can make that push again in December. Unfortunately, Mike Evans, guy I love. I love Mike Evans. I have always talked about how much I love Mike Evans. He's not going to get that record. He needs 215 yards per game for every game the rest of the season to get it. So in theory, it is in mathematical theory, it is still possible. However, Baker Mayfield would not be able to throw to anyone else on the football field for Mike Evans to get that, and it's not going to happen. So, having him back is going to be huge for the Buccaneers offense. Probably, I think he's just someone who just elevates an entire team in general. Stan, what do you think about the Falcons? Like, what's kind of your Kirk Cousins is starting, but they've been kind of this weird kind of team that plays okay, but not well enough to win games. Do you think they could play spoiler for the Buccaneers here?
I mean, it's so hard to tell because I didn't think the Saints would play spoiler to the Bucs at home in a big moment for them. But we saw that happen. So who knows what the floor of this team is. And one quick thing I want to mention about the Bucs as well is Cade Otton is doubtful, so he most likely will not be there. That's also a difference maker. But Jalen McMillan, who could take some of those, middle of the field receptions you were going to give to Otton, I think he could take up some of those snaps as well with a fully healthy receiver room. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. But with the Falcons, I mean, yeah, Kirk Cousins is the biggest guy we're looking at. He's had some moments where he stepped up against the Jets. I remember I remember him making a lot of good throws where his receivers were not coming down with the ball towards the end of that game there where the Jets won. And, I mean, Kirk Cousins, yeah, he's not the Kirk Cousins we know and remember from Minnesota. We've known that for a long time now. But he's still making throws. He's still a competent quarterback. And one of the biggest issues I've seen with this defense is just that guys are getting slower. They're getting older. And Kirk Cousins, as a guy who's plenty slow and getting much older now, I think it could be a little bit of an easier matchup for him. I think he can dissect the Bucs defense enough to get enough going on the field for a win here. It's also a home game for the Bucs. That makes it a little bit tougher for the Falcons, but the Bucs haven't really done a good job ever of having a great home environment. So Kirk Cousins, who's seen a lot of hostile crowds, I think he has enough left to surprise people tonight. To me, it ultimately comes down to coaching decisions. I think a lot of the issues with the offense have also been with the types of calls they're using Baker for. They don't have either of their starting guards. They haven't had them for most of the season, but it seems like Baker is not getting the easy, quick throws he should be getting, and instead having to run around in the pocket for 5-10 seconds before getting his read. So if they game plan correctly and get Baker the right types of calls, which they haven't shown consistently being able to do this season, I think they can have an easier win here. That being said, if they want to keep their play style the way they've been, using with more of a traditional pocket passing for Baker, I think that could work now, especially because you have Evans and McMillan back. So a lot of questions with it, but I think with the health of that offense coming back, I do expect them to have an easier win tonight.
All right. One notable injury for the Falcons before we move on is Drake London. He has already been ruled out, so Kirk Cousins will be without him tonight on Thursday Night Football. But the Buccaneers are tied in the NFC South, and it's been a while since they've really had to do this kind of race with another team in the NFC South. It hasn't really the last 3 seasons. They've just kind of controlled the NFC South by default. But the Carolina Panthers have somehow managed to stumble and fall their way into having a 7-6 record as well. Bryce Young is just wildly inconsistent at quarterback. Some weeks he looks like he's an amazing, franchise guy. And then sometimes he looks like he's just lost out there. And sometimes it's all within the same game. And you know what? That's the NFL. But they play the New Orleans Saints, who stand yesterday when we were prepping this, you were telling me about Tyler Shuck. And Tyler Shuck is someone I was hard on in the pre-draft process. I did not get a chance to watch his film like you asked me to. I got home from work late today. I'm sorry. I apologize. But Stan, what stood out to you about Tyler Shuck ahead of this matchup against the Carolina Panthers?
So, I mean, I was probably way harder than Shuck than you were on him going into the draft. A lot of people had him going to the Jets, so I really stood strong saying I do not want this guy on the Jets. Now, Tyler Shuck on paper has not been a great quarterback. He's not been worth the first round pick some people were attributing to him going into that draft. But for what the Saints have and what he's been for them, I think they can at least rest their hat on having an option. Because going into this upcoming draft, I think they shouldn't force the quarterback pick unless they really find someone they want. Now, if they think Mendoza is their guy and they want to trade to go up and get him, by all means, go and do it if he is your guy. I think Shuck has done enough, though, to be an option for this team. I think he's sorry. I think he's shown enough that he can lead at least. Now, in some of the recent games, even against the Bucks, the amount of times he would throw and make the right play, but his receiver was in the wrong position or didn't have the hands to bring down the ball, that to me is a bit frightening. I think he is a good enough quarterback to start in the NFL as of now, but the team around him is pretty bad. And we've known this going into the season for the Saints, and even for next season with their cap situation, how many big-name players they've had to cut and move around. They have a mess of a roster there, and Shuck doesn't really have a whole lot of help around him. That is something that gives me a lot more hope with him as a prospect, because as the Saints, who will get pretty high draft picks moving forward, as the Saints beginning to build the rest of this roster around Shuck, I only see him getting better.
Yeah, one of my concerns with Tyler Shuck coming into the season was his age. So he is a September baby. He's 26 years old. So he is going to already be 27 at the beginning of next season, going into October. And that's concerning because you got to be able to build around your quarterback, right? And if he's 27 years old in his second season, that can be hard to do, especially if he's not coming right out the gate strong. And I don't think he's coming out the gate strong, or at least where you'd want him to be, to look away from another quarterback. Joe Burrow's 30 or going to be 30. So that kind of tells you how these NFL draft ages vary, especially with COVID. That was a big thing that caused these discrepancies in age in the prospects. But I haven't watched the video, and the box stats do not tell the whole story. So I don't want to say that's all of it, but I don't know. Tyler Shuck, I'm not fully sold on him yet. I don't know that I would pass up on a quarterback in this draft if there's a good one there. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to try to watch this Panthers game because you said he did well against the Panthers last time, right? You thought that was your favorite game for him?
It would have been. I remember when he first got the starting nod, he had a lot of good, like good games where he was doing the right thing. One thing I didn't really mention this earlier, but his pocket presence has been fantastic overall. And for the Saints, a team where he's not getting a whole lot of help with clean pockets, having that skill, I think, is a difference maker. But yeah, I think the Panthers game was the one I was thinking of. But he's had a couple of performances where he's at least making the throws and looking like an NFL quarterback. And one point on that is there are 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think for the Saints, you can make an argument that he's at least not in the bottom 5 to 10 of that group. And for the Saints, if you have that, if you think he can be better with the team you're building around him, I just don't see why they go out and spend the picks and money getting a new quarterback in that system, trying to build around a new guy, when they don't really know what they have. The rest of the roster just has so many questions. I see them similar to the Titans, where it's like, yeah, they got Cam Ward, and he might be their guy, but it's just so hard to tell because of the lack of help around him. And Cam Ward definitely looks better than Tyler Shuck. Not trying to equate those two in any way. He's a world above Tyler Shuck. But my argument is Tyler Shuck, you know what you have there, and you know that he's been okay with the terrible roster. So maybe if you get him an okay roster, you can see something better from him.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I just, again, that age is concerning when we're talking about a rebuild like that. I think that's my main thing that I would kind of be a red flag. But we've seen teams turn it around in 2 seasons as well.
Well,
Like
that's the
the
thing.
Patriots. What?
So, on that note of the age, I think that's almost more of a reason to keep him because the Saints, he's kind of a low pressure option. He allows you to go ahead and find your guys in other parts of the field, and I see him as being kind of a Davis Mills level guy, where yeah, he's not going to win you games, but he's not going to lose you games. So the group of guys you have around him is going to impact a lot of what he can do. And I think like if the Saints had Davis Mills, or some quarterback of that level, I would make the same argument. Keep the guy, maybe get a quarterback in the third or fourth round, but use your premium draft capital to get the guys who you're not going to be able to get down the line, right? Use those premium positions to get those true game-changing players on defense who, are always going to those top 5 spots. And once you get your quarterback, you usually don't have access to those spots. So I would say pick those guys who are going to cost too much for you to get down the line.
All right. We will see what happens with Tyler Shuck. They play the Carolina Panthers, I believe, this Sunday. We have now reached the part of the show where I yell at Cincinnati Bengals ownership. Stan, before I go on my rant, have you seen anything about these rumors about Joe Burrow? Have you seen the posts about it? Watch the presser at all?
I haven't seen the exact rumors you're talking about, but Joe Burrow rumors have been out there basically this entire season. I actually saw a notification on my phone from about 30 minutes ago, and it said something along the lines of Joe Burrow to the Jets. Here's how this trade could work. So there's rumors of him getting traded to every team in the NFL. There's just a lot of lack of confidence in that Bengals team around him right now, and I think that's what's causing all of these rumors, including the ones you're about to speak about.
Yeah. So yesterday was Joe Burrow's birthday. I think he turned 30 yesterday. Let me get this fact correct first. Okay, he's 29. He turned 29 yesterday. He'll be 30 next year. And his press conference. First of all, if you've never watched a Joe Burrow press conference, he is even when he's happy, he's very nonchalant. He doesn't give long responses a lot of the time. He just he'll be like, yeah, that's how we played. Like he's not, zinging the reporters or anything like that. He's just very he's there. He's happy to be there, but he's a little awkward. And so I think that kind of plays against him. But then also everything that's been going on, it was clear that something wasn't right. And he was more reserved than usual. I will say that. And a reporter did ask him, what's going on? You're acting a little off. Are you okay? And he said there's just a lot going on. And he ultimately said there's a lot going on the football field and personally. And the easy thing to say is he's upset. He's going to retire. He's Andrew Luck all over again. And I do think that there is some truth to that. I do understand the comparison. That does scare me. But I want to offer some other possible things that are going on here. So, what do we know about Joe Burrow as a leader? Well, Joe Burrow is not someone who is going to come right out to the media and say, Zach Taylor, I'm so tired with him. Or Duke Tobin, I'm so done with him. Or I'm Matt. And that's just not the type of person he is usually. And I think this more reserved demeanor was sending a message to Mike Brown, where he did say, why am I doing this if it's not fun anymore? And that's true. Why? You're you're set for life. He's set for life. So why would he play if he's not having fun? If they're not winning football games, what's the point? And so I think that kind of sent a message to Mike Brown. And now, what are the three possible ways that Mike Brown could respond to that? Well, number one is the way the fans would hope he responds. And that is he wants to win football games. Does Mike Brown want to win a Super Bowl before he dies? Before his kids die? Like, they've shown no desire to be a competitive Super Bowl contender other than when they seemingly accidentally did it in 2021. So does Mike Brown want to win a football game? If that's your only goal is to win football games, okay? Number two, does he want to make money? Mike Brown, we know Mike Brown loves money. That's Mike Brown's whole thing. Every NFL fan knows that the owner of the Cincinnati Bengals loves money. Number three, this is the option I hope they would go with. This is the intelligent one. Even if you're Mike Brown, even if all you care about is money, what is your best way to make money as the owner of the Cincinnati Bengals? That is Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is your cash cow. You are not going to make more money without Joe Burrow than you are with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow sells tickets. Joe Burrow sells season tickets. Very important. Joe Burrow brings in sponsors. You can have a 1-15 record, and Joe Burrow is still people are still going to come to see Joe Burrow in that 17th game from all over the country. People love Joe Burrow. You have one of the big four being Lamar, Allen, Joe, and Mahomes. You have one of the big four. Make him happy. Keep him happy because he is the one who brings in money. So I am wondering if Joe Burrow is saying behind the scenes, I have been hurt multiple times in my career. And you could say he's injury prone. Get me an O-line. You know what they did? They got him an O-line. The O-line has played well this year. I don't care what the media pundits are saying. The O-line has played exceptionally well. Dalton Reisner has been a fantastic free agent signing. Extend him. Dalen Fairchild, he's struggled a little bit, but he's a third-round rookie. He's looked good. Amarius Mims has looked good. Get some depth there. Keep Scott Peters. If you fire everyone else, keep Scott Peters. I love Scott Peters coming in. Bring him back. Get rid of Zach Taylor. Get rid of Al Golden. I think those are the conversations Joe is having behind the scenes. Because this Bills game, even the Joe Burrow threw some interceptions. I blamed him for that. I fully did. People got mad at me on Twitter. Joe Burrow threw this, but also the play call on the pick six was so bad. I don't know if Joe checked into that play. That play should not have been in the playbook because that play required you to have a good grip on the ball and be able to get it over the top of the blitzer. That blitzer coverage was what that play was designed for, because if that ball gets to Jamar is gone. But in the snow, that is a very hard play to do. There's no reason to do it when you're up that many points in the fourth quarter in a snow game. It makes no sense. So I don't know why it was in the playbook. I don't know why Joe checked into it. I don't have the answers there. But we need to get serious about winning football games if we are going to win a Super Bowl and if the Browns want to continue to make money. I don't think Joe is as close to retiring as what people think, especially at the end. He did start laughing. Someone asked him what he got for his birthday, and he said the O-line got him a box of Pokemon cards. And they were talking about Pokemon, and he was laughing. He was joking with them. One of the reporters asked like what you do with Pokemon. He was like, "You set them up in the window," and Joe was like, "I'm just gonna let you research that yourself." Because he didn't know that the reporter didn't know they were cards. His three favorite Pokemon: Mewtwo, Blaziken, and Zapdos. So there you go. Does not like ghost types. So not a Gengar fan unfortunately. Sorry, Gengar. I like Gengar. But I think Joe Burrow is silently sending a message to ownership that things need to be fixed. And maybe behind the scenes, it's more audible. But if I am ownership, I'm not looking at the Ravens game. I'm not looking at any of the games this year. I'm looking at how can we become a competitive team next year? What do we need to do to keep Joe Burrow happy? And they've given Joe Burrow everything so far. Give him a defense. Run it back with the offensive line coach. Get a good coach who wants to win football games. I think Zach does want to win football games, but the NFL has moved past him. Stan, what are your thoughts on Joe Burrow? And then I do have something on Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, I mean, nothing much to add. The only thing I'll say is I can't remember hearing about a story like this and then that team having that fantastic season the following year. So it's a rough position to be in. Usually these sort of stories kind of spell the beginning of the end of that point in time of that era of that team. So we'll see if they can make it work. It doesn't sound great.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're at a crossroads here. Which path are we going to take? And that's ultimately on ownership. Jamar Chase had his presser today. Paul Dehner Jr. just tweeted out that Jamar Chase answered a bunch of questions about Joe Burrow. And Chase said that he sees the same guy every day smiling, no negativity, and that he loves football. The narrative y'all try to paint on him, I don't see it, is what Jamar said about Joe. So that's good because that's who Joe is going to confide in most of all the players on the team is probably Jamar. So that's promising. But yeah, I think you have to. I would bring in a defensive-minded coach, bring in a quality offensive coordinator. I'm not saying you completely sell out the offense. I've seen the idea that you can go without an offensive coordinator because Joe and the boys are just that good. That's stupid. With all due respect to those people. But yeah, I think they're at a crossroads. They need to do something. Hire an actual GM would be where I would start. Having this de facto GM and then focus on winning football games, not contract negotiations. If you lose $5 million here or there, okay, you're gonna make it up when you win the Super Bowl. So just don't worry about it. It'll be okay. I know that's easy to say sitting down here, but it'll be okay. I promise. The fans will support you as a fan. And speaking of winning contract negotiations, Trey Hendrickson. So I asked one of our friends who's come on the show before what his thoughts about Jesse, what his thoughts about a Hendrickson reunion with the Bengals this offseason could be. Because Trey is a free agent. Trey has been injured. Trey's on injured reserve right now, and he's out for the season. He had core muscle surgery on Monday, I believe. And Jesse said, quote, I'd say it's time to say our goodbyes to Trey. Don't see a scenario where he is back in Cincinnati. Maybe they tag and trade him, but I just don't think that happens. I hope that's the outcome and they don't just let him walk for a possible comp pick in 2027. Going to be another bad breakup with a star player. Time heals all wounds, and he'll be in the Ring of Honor, but that will be the next time he's in Bengals colors, end quote. So, yeah, that's very unfortunate. The other thing I don't like about this is I'm sure Troy Blackburn, who negotiated this contract, because remember, Duke is just kind of the face of the negotiations. I don't think he does a lot. He does some, but I don't know that he does a lot. And I can just see Katie Blackburn smiling and be like, good thing we didn't guarantee them all that. Didn't give him that second extension. Didn't give him all that money he wanted, right? We won. He got hurt. Like that's not the way to look at contracts, right? Yeah, it's unfortunate that he got hurt, but now you've made your star defensive player upset, arguably second best player on the team upset, one of your team leaders upset, and he's going to leave in free agency and potentially go be a dog for someone else. So it's unfortunate that's how that all worked out, and I hope that the Blackburns aren't in that mindset, but it seems like that's been their mindset all along, is how can we win contract negotiations? And they're in the mindset that they won this one, I think, which sucks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Not really on that, but just one thing. I was thinking about what you said about head coach, and I don't know if defensive head coach would be the best bet, but I thought of someone who has a lot of connections to the Bengals and a lot of connections to the people who made the Bengals great that year you won the Super Bowl. And he's living in Tampa, Florida right now, working for Barstool Sports. I'm talking about Gruden. He's worked with the guys who made the Bengals great in their heyday. He developed the guys who brought you to where you are. He could bring the Callahans back, right? And I think he knows he's probably one of the best talent evaluators in the NFL, who've coached the NFL in terms of who he brings to his team. The assistants he's brought up to be coordinators, to be coaches, have gone off and done some amazing things at other teams. And I think that's because he knows how to build a staff well. If you want to talk about a turnaround, a one-year turnaround, I think Gruden's your best bet. He won a Super Bowl in the first year with the Bucs, right? He knows how to be a coach in the NFL and how to build a team very, very quick. And because he has those connections to the coaching staffs, in the Bengals, it might be kind of weird for him replacing Zach Taylor. But if you want to move on from him, I think he might be your guy.
Yeah, me and you have discussed this a little bit, and I know there's a lot of fans that have been chanting for John Gruden. My concern about John Gruden is, first of all, he brings a lot of media attention that may not be great. But aside from that, even, I don't know how great of a coach he is. He's got kind of a weird track record because, like you mentioned, that Super Bowl he won in his first year, but how much of that was Tony Dungy's team? Right? Hall of Fame head coach Tony Dungy. And then you can mention he kind of turned around the Raiders there for a second. But then there's also a lot of seasons he had with the Raiders where they weren't a great team, which maybe they're a struggling organization. So I don't know that John Gruden is the answer. I think he should be brought in. I do think he should be brought in for an interview. But I don't know that he is like, I would just go out and get John Gruden, in my opinion. But
yeah, I mean, definitely consider other options. I just, off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone else who, like, if the way you're describing it, it seems like Joe Burrow, if you don't turn it around next season, he might be gone, right? He might retire next season if you don't bring him a winning record, a good team. And Gruden's the only guy I can think of who's out there who might go and actually coach the team, who's a reasonable candidate. And he knows people in the NFL. I think that might be the most important part of this equation. Because if you bring in a guy who's just been out of the NFL and isn't aware of which coaches are around there, who to bring in and make up a staff, you can't win a Super Bowl without a good coaching staff. So that's part of it right there. But I think I see him as someone who has those Bengals connections. We've seen him bring multiple teams, improve on multiple teams before. I think he might be the best candidate. But yeah, it's just something to think about.
Yeah, no, I do. Like I said, I think they should bring him in. I don't know that he's the best candidate. I don't really know who I think the best candidate is at this point. We'll see who gets fired. There's a lot of rumors about guys who get fired at the end of the year here. So maybe that opens up the coaching search as well. But we've got some more football games to talk about. First of all, Chargers-Chiefs. Kind of an interesting one. Justin Herbert's still got that beat up hand. The Chiefs are not good. The Chiefs are struggling. I didn't like the Chiefs last year. I was shocked they made it to the Super Bowl. They did not play well last year. They won a lot of games by like one play call, one possession, one just kind of lucky thing that fell their way. And this past game on Sunday Night Football, we said we're going to find out who the Kansas City Chiefs are. We're going to find out who the Houston Texans are. And the Chiefs look dumb, frankly. And Patrick Mahomes is still a fantastic quarterback. And I know it's like sacrilege to say this, but he has not been playing well the last few seasons. The last 2, maybe 3 seasons, including this season, he has not been playing at the level we have come to expect from Patrick Mahomes. And I think that's fair. He's getting older. Like that's not a detriment at him at all. I'm just saying you can't put the entire team on his back and carry them like he could before. And now they have more holes than ever. Chris Jones is getting older. They don't really have a strong, consistent run game. I've seen issues with them, people saying their O-line isn't good. I don't think that's true. They've had some injuries on O-line, so that might be part of the issue, but I do think they have invested in the O-line. But like Travis Kelce, he's older. He had that kind of catch where he like bobbled it and then threw it over his head. I don't even know what that was. And it ended up in an interception. I think Azeez Al-Shaair intercepted it. But yeah, the Chiefs just aren't a good football team this year. And they need to retool a little bit, get some new players in there. Maybe admit to themselves. I don't think the Chiefs are going to be good until they admit to themselves that Patrick Mahomes cannot, shoulder the entire football team anymore. But what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that O-line is bad. I think they've been a poor O-line in the NFL for a couple of years now, but because they had a quarterback who is fantastic at getting out of a lot of those situations, they've looked better than they are. And so I think that's the number one concern for the Chiefs. But looking into the game, Justin Herbert definitely wasn't a great performance in terms of the stats or what he did, or an amazing performance at least by those standards. But in terms of what he did with the injury, the toughness, the resilience he showed in that primetime game, me, I've been a big fan of Justin Herbert for a couple years, but like that made me love him so much more because it was like a Michael Jordan flu game, right? So much on the line for the Chargers. They needed that win against the Texans, a very, very good, very competitive. Sorry, not the Texans. I'm bugging. Eagles, yeah, a very good competitive team who, on paper, beats them by a lot, right? On paper, the Eagles are a 10 times better team than the Chargers, who've had injuries, had issues throughout this season. The Eagles coming back from the Super Bowl, right? On paper, they should have been beat by a couple of scores there. But Justin Herbert just keeping himself together enough, despite his O-line not giving him any favors there. That, to me, was just a fantastic performance by them. So
yeah. You continue.
Sorry, I kind of stopped there for a second, but just with the Chargers, I'm really bought all in on them. Also, that defense, the way so many guys stepped up against the Eagles, obviously the interceptions there right at the end, so much amazing plays from that defense. Who I think they've really been overplaying. At least this game, they overplayed who they're supposed to be. On paper, I don't see this defense as at the level they've been performing at.
Yeah. So. First, let me go back to the O-line. I do think the Chiefs O-line can be improved. I just don't think it's this. I don't think it's the main issue. I don't think it's a Bengals level O-line that I've seen it compared to. I would not have traded Joe Thuney, who they had lining up at left. They moved him from left guard to left tackle last year. And then he did pretty well, I thought. And then they traded him to the Bears, where he's still doing pretty well. But I wouldn't have done that. But talking about the Chargers, I don't know that I would say this was, a phenomenal performance from Justin Herbert. I thought he played very well, especially given all things. But he had some turnovers for like the entire first half. Both him and Hurts were just turning the ball over left and right. And he did adjust. He figured it out. He got in the right mindset to win that football game against a very good defense. They have Quinyon Mitchell on that Eagles defense, who I looked it up, and he is like a top 5 targeted corner, but his passer rating that he's allowed is insanely low. And the other 4 corners are not corners CB1s. They're all like CB2s and 3s that aren't that great. So the fact that he's being targeted, probably, I would say the narrative there is that he's being put on the wide receiver 1, who's going to be targeted anyway, and he is still preventing that ball from being caught. So good on him. Good defense. Good pass coverage. But the Chargers found the way to win. Amarion Hampton came back. First time we've seen him in a while. Did he look amazing? No. But he had some explosiveness. He had some good runs. Vidal has looked amazing for an RB2. He kind of came out the back now that Najee's out. So really RB3 has really kind of picked up that role. And I do agree with you. I do think the Chargers are the much better team here and could make a run. It'd be interesting to see how that wild card falls out. I do think the Broncos are going to end up winning the West. I thought that was going to happen at the beginning of the year. But the Chargers can make a push. Chargers can make a strong wild card push, and I think could be one of those teams that upsets whoever they get lined up with, whichever division winner they get lined up with. Do you have concerns about the Chargers O-line?
Oh, very much. I mean, you talked about Hampton there, and one thing we kind of texted about after the game is watching Hampton's performance. I thought he was poor, but I didn't really think it was his fault as much. I think that O-line just gave him nothing to work with. And no matter who was running the ball for the Chargers, it's just that O-line was not creating the right spaces. Now, that being said, the Eagles' D-line, I think, could be the biggest factor in that question, right? That's one of the best D-lines in the league. They have some of the best individual performers at the very least on defense in the league, and that D-line kept things real closed up for them. Also, Ladd McConkey, you talked about Mitchell. McConkey was out of the game. He wasn't really a factor at all there, and that also impacts a lot of what Herbert is able to do on offense, what the running backs are able to do. When you can't get the ball to your number one receiver and you're relying more on your running backs, that's going to hurt you as well. So yeah, that Chargers O-line, very much a question. I don't think they can really turn it up that much better. I think they're kind of at their max right now, that O-line. I think their season will be capped because of that play.
Yeah, that's probably true. I wonder what Hampton would look like not going against that Eagles D-line. Because like you mentioned, that Eagles D-line is very good. And he didn't look amazing, but he did still have some explosive runs coming off of an injury against the Eagles D-line, against the Eagles linebackers and corners. Like that whole defense is very good in the run. So we'll be interested to see what Hampton does against an arguably weaker Chiefs defense in that regard. And I think that the Chargers O-line may have an easier time against the Chiefs D-line as well. Chris Jones hasn't really been himself. George Karlaftis, I think, has been. I'd have to look back. We don't cover the Chiefs a whole lot, so I don't watch them a bunch. I watch them some, but I don't watch them as much as like the Bengals or the Steelers. But I think George Karlaftis is probably their main guy on that line, but we'll see. I don't know for sure. Bills Patriots, two kind of AFC East matchup, two teams you're very familiar with. Patriots, you pointed this out to me yesterday, have a 10-game win streak, as do the Denver Broncos. That is insane in the NFL. And now the Patriots have had a very easy schedule. I saw a little joke that they had the NFL draft like top 10, and someone was like, "Hey, look, it's the Patriots schedule," and I thought that was pretty funny. But that being said, Patriots are still a very good football team schematically. Playing against another very good football team in the Buffalo Bills. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But Stan, you're familiar with both these teams, so what do you think happens here?
Well, in this game, it's definitely being in New England, right? Their home game. I just don't see Buffalo having too much of a chance here. That team has been just spiraling throughout the season, and I feel like every other week I think, well, they're still the Bills. We've seen them get out of worse positions in this, and basically every season for the last 3-4 years with Josh Allen leading that team. But every single game, it feels like they step on their own feet. They mess themselves up, and I just don't see the Bills having too much of a chance here, especially with it being a home game for the Patriots.
Yeah, I think the Bills' defense is going to be challenged a lot here with Drake May, Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs is familiar with this team, with this offense. So what does he know? Is he able to share anything? Maybe he kind of talks about some of the trends Joe Brady likes, the offensive coordinator over there in Buffalo. But this Patriots defense is also very good. I could see this kind of turning into a defensive battle. We have seen games, specific the Bengals game. Drake May struggled in the Bengals game. The defense held him last week. The Bengals defense held Josh Allen for quite a bit, and ultimately, the Bengals offense is arguably what lost them that game. The final play where the Bengals defense was on defense was awful, but other than that, Joe Burrow throwing that pick six and then that other interception right after it, that was what lost them the game. So I want to see how these two quarterbacks react to the opposing defenses within the division. Drake May, this is probably his biggest challenge this season, I would say. Would you agree with that?
No,
No,
I would disagree. The Bills just are not the team I viewed them as before, especially since they beat the Bills up in not Arrowhead, up in Highmark. I think that's also a big thing to take into consideration. They should feel confident against this team. They shouldn't feel on the back foot, and especially with the home crowd there. Josh Allen, I just don't think he has it at this point in time enough to overcome that home crowd and overcome a fantastic Patriots team in fantastic form.
What team that they've played this year would you say was more of a challenge for them? The Buccaneers?
No, I mean, I guess I'd have to look at their schedule to really.
I'll read you their schedule real quick because they have had a very easy schedule. There's a few teams that I think you could maybe argue would be harder than the Bills, but they played the Raiders, the Dolphins, the Steelers, the Patriots, the Bills, the Saints, the Titans, the Browns, the Falcons, the Buccaneers, the Jets, the Bengals, and the Giants.
Wow. Okay. I guess this is the hardest game, but even then, it's hard to say that because they played the Bills in Buffalo and beat them. So I don't think it doesn't feel like a hard game for them. There's not really a big game, like a crazy big game on the schedule at all.
Yeah, they won that game by 3 points, just for people who don't know. So I do think that's notable. They have the Bills, Ravens, Jets, and Dolphins the rest of the season. So Bills and Ravens are really their only two difficult games. And you could argue that neither of those are really that difficult. We'll see kind of how the Ravens finish out the season. But yeah, I don't know. I think the Bills can win this game. I think the Bills have more of something to prove than what the Patriots do. So I think they might come in more fiery. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Moving on to the other 10-win team streak, the Broncos. Denver Broncos, a team that I have criticized a ton this year, even though I thought they were going to win the AFC West, versus the Packers. So the Denver Broncos are the 2024 Kansas City Chiefs. They win a ton of games in ways that they shouldn't. In one play or one call, it just kind of falls their way. I think that they're a good football team. I do. I don't know that I think that they're the best team in the AFC. I think that's where I kind of differ from them. They've had a lot of games where Bo Nix has not really shown up till the fourth quarter. And, I've seen Broncos fans are proud of that. They're fourth quarter finisher Bo Nix, but that's not going to help you in the playoffs. You can't do that in the playoffs. So this Packers team, they've been going back and forth. Micah Parsons is going to be out there. I'd be interested to see if this Jordan Love-led offense with Christian Watson, they've got some health back. They're not completely healthy. I saw Josh Jacobs just had an MRI today. But I'd be interested to see if this Packers offense can challenge this Broncos defense and potentially even get a win over this Broncos team.
Yeah, I mean, they've won their last 4 games. I think that is something that has to be stated about them. They're in good form to that extent, right? And that Bears game, I thought the Bears were going to pull an upset there. But the Packers did a pretty good job. They controlled a lot of that game. They did a great job of just being consistent, getting the ball down the field. And with that wide receiver room, it always seems like every week someone's taking a big step up and two guys are taking a big step down. It's hard to keep track of them, but they've done a good job recently, at least, of getting the ball distributed, getting their playmakers, in good space, open enough. And I think they'll be able to keep this a lot more competitive. With the Broncos, it's just I feel the same way as you, where it's so hard to tell because they just keep on doing it. If they had a couple of games where they weren't able to get that fourth quarter nicks and come back and win it, maybe I'd feel differently about it. But they just keep on finding the way to do it, that it almost seems like that's just the team they have. They're just going to grind out those sort of wins there. And in the playoffs, I actually think they can do it because outside of the Patriots, who in the AFC is really putting pressure on them? And as we just now talked about with the Patriots, we're looking at the Patriots as a team who are kind of lucky in that they haven't really played any great teams. So it's just so hard to tell with the Broncos what we're looking at here. But with the rest of their schedule, I could see them winning outright, especially with the form they're in.
Yeah. I think at this point, the way we're looking at the teams, the NFC conference champion is going to win the Super Bowl. With what I would say that right now, I'll call that shot. But I know we had some other games we want to talk to. We are getting low on time though, so I'm going to skip two of those, unfortunately. One big thing of note for the Steelers-Dolphins game, though, is that TJ Watt is now questionable. He was hospitalized with some discomfort in his lung. So that's something to keep an eye on. I will keep YouTube feed and Instagram updated as well as we know more about that. But Phillip Rivers. Stan, I have been posting about Phillip Rivers all week. 44-year-old Phillip Rivers is returning to the Indianapolis Colts. He gave a great press conference yesterday. It was fun to watch. It's only about 10 minutes long. If you haven't watched it, it's very entertaining. But he says shoot a lot. I did not know that. Instead of he says like shoot. But Stan, people know my thoughts on this. What are your thoughts on Phillip Rivers coming back?
It's cool, and I hope he does well because it would be one of the greatest storylines in the history of this league. But I'm sorry, I just don't see it. I don't think he's going to be able to get out a win there. And I'm looking at the other guys on that roster, and I don't know. I think any of those like third string level quarterbacks would still be better than Phil Rivers at this point in time because at least they could run around a little bit more. They could feel the pressure a little better. He hasn't played in a bit. How's his feel of the game going to be? The speed of the game. I don't know if he's going to be able to just step in there and feel an NFL defense coming at him and, not get sacked 10 times and throw in like 2 or 3 interceptions.
Yeah. So, you mentioned the other guys. Riley Leonard is a 6th-round rookie with a knee injury. He's been practicing. He's expected to start this week. Brett Rapine, he's Brett Rapine. He is what he is, He's been on just about every practice squad around the league. And then after that, it's nobody. They have Phillip Rivers. And Phillip Rivers is arguably above Brett Rapine. Tyler Warren is their emergency quarterback. So Anthony Richardson's on IR. I talked about that. I made it short about that. Everyone forgot Anthony Richardson was on IR, but he's got that orbital fracture. So my thing with this, and I saw a tweet from someone, and I agree with them. I think Phillip Rivers, he said the Hall of Fame eligibility thing wasn't something he considered, but also I think he may have considered it because he was not going to get in this year with Drew Brees and Eli Manning also as semifinalists. If he resets for 5 years, there's really nobody challenging him in this next 5 years because Big Ben will be in, I believe, or at least he'll have been on the ballot for a year or two. And then Rodgers will be with him, but Rodgers is going to be a first ballot guy anyway. Brady will already be in. There's kind of this gap, I think. There's not really anyone I can think of or that this person who made this tweet could think of that would fill in this spot. So that might help his cause. Also, Matthew Stafford is very close to passing him in career yardage, and he's very close to passing Ben Roethlisberger in career yardage. So that might be part of this as well. Just, helping the resume a little bit, help your chances. But he could also just be a guy who's out there ready to have fun. Shane Steichen's his buddy. Shane Steichen was with him on the Chargers. He's been talking to Shane Steichen every week about this offense. Like he said in his presser, he never ran away from anyone anyway. So he's not too worried about his, mobility because he was never that mobile of a quarterback. So I do get the concerns, and they're totally legitimate concerns. He's a 44-year-old quarterback who hasn't played since COVID, and he's just coming back into the NFL trying to, redeem this team. The fact that he's not going in against the Seahawks, I think, is very smart. And you know what? If they come in with Riley Leonard against the Seahawks and Riley Leonard wins, keep Riley Leonard. Let's see what you have in this rookie. Because right now you don't know what's going to happen with Daniel Jones. I do like that they're starting Riley Leonard. But if Riley Leonard, doesn't do well for whatever reason, it's fun to see Phillip Rivers again, right? You always got that going for you, and he's going to sell tickets. So that's kind of where I think the Colts are at this point, because they've ran out of every other option.
Yeah, I still do think those other guys would probably be better in terms of just winning a game. And with how hard the schedule is for the Colts, it's, as you said, there are no other options to some extent. I can't be confident with him going on the field. I will do everything I can to watch that game, though, because that will be probably the most interesting game I can remember in terms of a guy coming back, right? It seemed impossible. I think that's the right word. That's how it seemed to me. If you had told me 3 weeks ago that Phil Rivers might come back to the NFL, I would have told you you're wrong. I would have bet everything I own against Phil Rivers coming back to the NFL, because that's how impossible it feels. But we're seeing that happen, and it's just such an interesting story. And I will say, in terms of the Hall of Fame stuff, if he can play a real part in this Colts team making the playoffs, whether it's with only one win or whatever it looks like, if he can get them to just make the playoffs, I can't see how you bring those other guys onto the Hall of Fame. I don't think Big Ben would be able to hold up against Phil Rivers with everything else Rivers has already done in terms of a resume.
I think Big Ben and Rivers are. I think you can have a conversation there, because Big Ben has the Super Bowl that Rivers doesn't have.
I think with the controversy around Big Ben, though, some voters will be kind of skeptical about putting him in. And if he could bring a team at this age as a grandfather, the first grandfather to throw a pass in the NFL, right? If he can be that guy and somehow bring them to the playoffs, I don't see how that doesn't, along with everything we already know about these two quarterbacks, take him above.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and like I said, there's really no one else there in that time frame that he's going to be competing. Matt Ryan, maybe, but I don't know that. I don't really consider Matt Ryan a Hall of Famer. I know people say, well, he has the MVP, he has the Super Bowl appearance, but that Super Bowl appearance is also the biggest collapse in Super Bowl history, I believe. So not that that's Matt Ryan's fault. That was on the Falcons defense, but still, that's how he's remembered, unfortunately. And I don't know. I do think this has a bigger chance to help his Hall of Fame resume than it does to hurt it. I don't think anyone, if he comes out and he throws 3 interceptions and just, plays like crap, I don't think anyone's going to hold that against him. They're all just going to look at that and say, he's 44 years old. He hasn't played in 5 years. Okay, yeah, that's what we expected. But if he comes out and throws for like 250, maybe 2 touchdowns, Jonathan Taylor, handing the ball off to Jonathan Taylor or something like that, let's talk about it. Maybe we do have a Hall of Fame guy on our hands. And he's familiar with the offense. Like I said, him and Shane have been talking about it. But I do like that the Colts are prioritizing seeing what they have in their young rookie with Riley Leonard. So, Stan, we are running out of time. Do you have anything else you would like to say before we head on out?
No, just excited to see what Rivers has. That's going to be a very interesting game, regardless of what happens.
Yeah, so just to clarify, I don't want anyone coming on YouTube and saying we said Phillip Rivers was starting. I did not say that. Stan did not say that. Riley Leonard, as of the recording of this show, despite his knee injury, is expected to start against the Seattle Seahawks. But keep an eye on that. I will keep an eye on that, and I will update you as we know more. Stan, what you got?
One more thing that has to be mentioned. I just want to confirm this. If he, assumably Leonard plays this game and he plays the next, that would be against the 49ers, and it would be the Disney Plus game. So we'd see Phil Rivers play as a character from a beloved children's cartoon.
Which one?
I don't know which one. I think they alternate with it, right?
Okay.
So,
I know they just had the Monsters Inc. game. So the Eagles Chargers was the Monsters Inc. game. So
unless I'm misunderstanding, but I did check the schedule and it says Disney Plus on it. So I think that would mean it's something like that. So
I don't know.
I hope so.
Okay. I don't know. I don't keep up with that part of things. But we will. Maybe that's in the future. I don't know. But thank you, Stan, so much for joining us once again. Thank you for watching today's show. Everything we have going on, from depressed Joe Burrow playing with Pokemon cards to Grandpa Phil and the Indianapolis Colts. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps us out so much. The algorithm loves it when you do that. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any news. I'm posting news all the time. So do that. And until next time, go do something nice for someone.